Hello, and welcome to Tarot and Attachments. My name is Erin Smith. I am a professional tarot reader and an associate marriage and family therapist. And I thought I would come on here today because we are having a full moon in the sign of Pisces. It is also the beginning of eclipse season. So there is a lunar eclipse that is happening at the time of this full moon. And eclipses happen every 6 months, and they tend to open up a season of changes, the closing of some doors and the opening of new ones. So I thought I would take this opportunity to look at the archetypes that are emerging at this time collectively through the tarot and see if we can't garner some insight. This eclipse is happening on Sunday, September 7th. So I'm checking in a little early. So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go silent and I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle. Just going to say a prayer. So not so surprisingly, we have the archetypal representation of ending and rebirth. The Eight of Cups is leaving the past behind. And specifically, in terms of matters of the heart, things that affect us emotionally, relationally, spiritually, maybe. I mean, not so surprising. I believe that cup energy is very much oriented towards Pisces. Pisces occurring at the end of the zodiac that dissolves barriers and allows us to contact sort of a more ephemeral spiritual connection. And the Eight of Cups is letting go of the past. And the story I usually tell with the Eight of Cups is that when a caterpillar spins itself a cocoon, in order to emerge as a butterfly, it first liquefies its body. So in order to complete this process of transformation, it is necessary to disidentify from old identifications. old ideas, old ways of being. And this disidentification, it can be frightening. It is a kind of ego death. And there is this liminal space in between stages of development that people find very unsettling, where we're not who we were, but we're not where we're going or who we are becoming just yet. It is sort of like going into the darkness. And it requires a tremendous amount of faith that we can complete this process of transformation, and that there's a kind of surrender that's necessary in order to get to this next phase of development. Remember, the caterpillar doesn't know that every cell in his body is being repurposed for a higher state of being. For him, it feels like death. And so in some ways, you can think of this time as a surrender into the unknown, what is more unknown to us that are living than death. And to trust that there is something on the other side, something akin to a rebirth. Judgment is rebirth. It is the phoenix rising from the ashes. So on the death of the old way comes a new higher formation for our lives, greater clarity and insight, a more skillful way of meeting the world based on who we're becoming due to letting go of the past. And again, this is not easy. It's not easy to let go. In fact, it is very common for human beings to cling to elements of life that we look to for security. And that's, you can kind of think of pentacles as representing this material security that we all wish to garner in life, right? So money is an obvious one, but institutions, relationships that feel familiar, even identities, right? If I have thought of myself in a certain way for a long period of time, and then suddenly I shift out of that, sometimes I think of it like this. If you've devoted your life to a certain profession or a certain practice, you think to yourself, I am an artist, and then you become a scholar. Sometimes it's hard to let go of those old identifications. It's unsettling. And that's really the energy of the Four of Pentacles. It's this sort of contractive, clutching, rigid, and it's a lack of release. And ultimately, what the Four of Pentacles is saying is that it is necessary for us to let go in order for something new to come in. Right? You can see him. He's very clamped down around these structures in life that he feels defines his sense of security. But remember, he's a king and he's sitting in front of his kingdom. And in fact, kings are in possession of great wealth and power, a sense of volition. He doesn't have to hold on so tightly to every coin to ensure his wealth and well-being. So again, there's this essence of letting go, of trusting that we have what we need in order to be shepherded to the next phase of life in a good way. And so in order to make the most of this journey, it is necessary for us to keep an open mind. You can think of the Page of Swords as a representation of beginner's mind. And ultimately, you know, the Zen Buddhists talk a lot about this, that if you already know everything, then no new information can come in. Beginner's mind is open and curious. It doesn't know, and so it's able to receive insights. And this is, in essence, what we are being called to do. Let go of your old ideas. Let go of your judgments and your analysis about what it means to move through this phase of your life. The things that we often deem to be the worst case scenario sometimes have a way of invoking new ways of being that we could, and I'll use the example in my life of getting sober. Looking back, it was a terrible time in my life, a time of tremendous loss and grief and despair. And what I can see now is that those were necessary experiences for me to have in order to be born again as one who lets go of a dependency on substances for self-soothing, so that true healing of self could then take place. So at the time, if you'd asked me, I would have told you it was the worst time in my life. I would have formulated an analysis that improperly identified that stage of life. In fact, what that allowed me to do is let go of old ways of coping in order to have a new experience. Consider that time in my life really to be the beginning of a spiritual practice. I think I had interest in spiritual technologies or information. I was an avid reader of different spiritual traditions. And I even had some ecstatic experiences, some sort of divine downloads, but I didn't have a practice. The practice that I went to consistently at that time was self-destruction. And so it was this ability to stay open that led me to this chapter of life. And, it's been unfolding ever since. It's been a long process. Because this is true for all of us, that these cycles of death and rebirth occur throughout a lifetime. For some of us more than others, certainly. But this is a time where you may notice big changes happening in your life. And I'm going to invite you to refrain from making a judgment and just staying open and curious to noticing what is coming up for you around this time. And, the way that I think of the Six of Cups, and I think this card came up 2 weeks ago at the new moon, I think. It's been coming up in readings for clients in the last week or so. And the Six of Cups is like loving before you've ever had your heart broken. It's loving with an unguarded heart. There's a kind of sweet vulnerability, an ability to give of your authentic self to the world, to another, without reservation, without fear of rejection or abandonment. And there's this incredible, sweet exchange of love and appreciation that can happen when we are capable of letting go of all our hurt, our betrayal, our brokenheartedness, which is true for most adults. I know very few adults who have made it into the latter stages of life without having experienced some deep loss around love. So to come back to a time where we are willing to be vulnerable and love again, it is a kind of gift that requires transformation. So another piece of this equation is about really communing with our inner selves, our inner truth, coming into a time of contemplative reflection. The hermit is one who goes inward to seek the answers for himself. And then that knowledge that is gained through insight becomes the beacon that lights the way out in the world. And this is a kind of antidote to getting captured by one's own mind. Strength is about taming the beast within. It is mastering your mind so that your mind doesn't master you. And it is certainly an acknowledgement that not everything your head tells you is helpful or true. It is easy when you are in a state of rumination, projection, worry, trepidation, cognitive distortion. Most of the time, when you're in this state of overthinking, when the internal critic is engaged, the mind feels like a weapon that we use on ourselves. And it is easy to get caught up and to get sort of dragged down the rabbit hole of despair. But if one can recognize that mental activity is not the self, you are the one who is witnessing this talk that is happening in the realm of the mind. And when you disidentify from your thoughts as though they are you, then something happens. There's space to practice discernment, to get open and curious about what's happening, what might be triggering this internal critic. What old ideas is this ruminative narrative based on? And again, being able to take a broader view of one's own life. So the Eight of Wands is a very, very hopeful, I would say, energy that is fluid and fast moving. There's a kind of creativity, heat to the Eight of Wands. I liken it to surfing a wave. There's a kind of generative energy that is free flowing. And when you align yourself with it, it takes you in places. It's like it's being in the flow. It's a flow state. And those states tend to be very pleasurable. They tend to usher in synchronicities, and they feel rightly aligned. So I think this is really an opportunity for us to discover new territory, to get to play, to harness that momentum to get to places that had been previously blocked, to really surf this wave into the next chapter in both meaningful ways that give us a sense of new meaning, new purpose. So I hope that that was helpful. I hope that this message finds you well, and I wish you many blessings on this full moon lunar eclipse. Take care.